Hi everyone, Suzanne Barnhurst here with the week 3 wrap-up video. First, let me say I hope that all of you are healthy and staying away from others as much as you possibly can. I want to say thank you to all of you whose jobs have you on the front lines in any way, whether it be healthcare or other positions in working in retail or food service. I want to just say I'm very grateful for all of you. I know there's a lot of you that work at Jefferson, and I sincerely thank you for your service and your work at Jefferson, and especially for those who so desperately need you. I'm sure we all feel the same way. Please keep wearing your protective gear and keep washing your hands. I think those are the only ways we're going to stop the spread, is if we all do our part. So thank you all, and I won't keep you all in my thoughts. You did a great job on the forum this week. I always enjoy the Urban Legend forum because everybody has a little different perspective from students in the past. And I always get a laugh out of a few of them because of some of the things that you say, but they're definitely very enjoyable. And you all did a very good job identifying what makes them credible. So let me do a little wrap up of that, and then we're going to talk a little bit about moving on to Unit 4. This week we discussed urban legends and how do we deem them credible? Specifically, we learned to attribute credibility to the stories or messages with 6 different ways. The first one was an anti-authority figure, which is somebody, and I'm going to read this so I say it exactly how Heath and Heath have said it. There's somebody that has no status in society, but they're honest and they have trustworthiness. And the example they used is the smoker in the anti-smoking commercial. When you see those commercials, they are an anti-authority, but you know they have experience, so they're credible in your mind, in all of our minds. The second way is concrete details, because concrete details make it real and believable. A third way is statistics. We can conceptualize by statistics but in terms that are not human, but we can make statistics look more human when we do it in a presentation. Human scale principle, which is an everyday analysis, something that we do on a regular basis. We can use that for credibility. We can use the Sinatra test, which means that we've given the audience extraordinary information that leaves a strong impression on them. And that the Sinatra test comes from the song when Frank Sinatra said, "If I can make it there, I can make it anywhere," meaning New York, because New York was the toughest place to make it in music. So if he could be successful there, think what he could do anywhere else. And that's a Sinatra test. And that's one way you can make a story credible, a message credible. And the last one is testable credentials, which means that the audience test it out for themselves. You give them a challenge and they test it out for themselves, because you know they're going to find the same answer. Okay, you wouldn't use testable credentials if you weren't sure. So there were 2 examples from the discussion forum that I thought were particularly good, and I want to point them out. The first one is from Tiffany, who used the Bloody Mary urban legend, and she said testable credentials are what make that urban legend credible, because it dares people to test it out for themselves, to go in the bathroom and try it for themselves. A simple yelling out of her name will show you whether it worked or not. So who could resist that? It's an easy test. There's no effort in trying to test this particular urban legend out. And added detail in the story would what makes it work for you. Many of us may have heard that legend in the past, so we would be willing to give it a try. A second one was Jamie Hahn. She used the kidney heist urban legend. She said that it was concrete details and testable credentials on the story of the Jersey Devil that made this story believable and credible, which makes it believable. It's a local story, a local urban legend, and it uses the Pine Barrens as some sort of a animal that roams the Pine Barrens. The mother of this animal was a New Jersey settler, and there's been sightings of the Jersey Devil. So those were sort of the details that made it credible. Plus, there are so many people in New Jersey that have heard that tell this story that it's almost believable until you go look in the Pine Barrens and you don't find anybody. So, and a note on that, I got thinking about the Bigfoot and wondering if Bigfoot is actually deemed an urban legend, and yes, it is. But while doing that little bit of research, I came across a really good article on urban legends from every state in the United States. So I'm going to attach that link to this video for you if you have time. Just take a look at it. It's pretty fun. It's pretty interesting, the different urban legends that are out there from different states. My favorite one was the Deer Island Haunted Treasure from Mississippi. So take a look at that if you have a chance. Okay, so let's move on. In an urban legend, there is usually something relatable that hooks us and encourages us to keep reading. It could be something like a detail, like a specific detail. It could be an emotion like fear. If you'll remember, a lot of these urban legends had something to do with fear. It could be a fact that we've heard before. We relate to it, so we must explore the urban legend. We hear something, we think, oh, that reminds us of something. Think, well, maybe this is true. Heath and Heath tells us that in order to get an idea like an urban legend to spread, there's 3 ways we can make that happen. When we create this urban legend, or whoever created it, we can design it with an emotional idea. Like we just said, it could be fear. Because when it has an emotional component, we will pass it on 90 to 94% of the time. There's something about emotion within us, fear. Let me think, another emotion, a message that makes us care, a message that makes us think, oh, I can help someone. Those things, those kinds of emotions will make us pass it on 90 to 94% of the time. Another way to get an urban legend to spread is to make it a story of possible public service, like the babysitter urban legend or the man in the back seat. Those 2 stories, or even the kidney heist, those 3 stories gave us a piece of information that we feel compelled to pass on. Well, if this is true, we better tell people. We want to help people. That's just the way we are, many of us, and we will pass it along that way. The other thing that will make us pass on an urban legend is something like a trigger in the environment that gets us to spread the idea. It reminds us of something, some kind of a trigger in the environment. I would venture to say that eventually there may be an urban legend coming out of this coronavirus crisis. That's what's going on in the environment right now. It's all encompassing, and it's a global phenomenon. And eventually there may be an urban legend that comes out to say, this is how the coronavirus started. There may be multiple ones, but the reason it will spread and people will start to believe it is because we're looking for some answers in this current, in this environment. And if someone says, oh, here's something that might be it, we most likely will go for that. And an urban legend will come out of that. Out of all these events. Hopefully not, but maybe. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. How do we use these then, these success principles that we've discussed so far? Concrete, credible, and simple, concrete, and credible. How do we use these that we've learned about so far? Well, these legends all use one or more of these strategies that we just talked about to gain their credibility. You should use one or more in your final project. Tanya Parks pointed out in her review of the kidney heist that as a group, we learned from urban legends that we must learn to listen with a questionable attitude. We can't believe everything we hear. And many of us already have that questionable attitude in pretty much everything that we hear. And you should, as a student, you should validate everything you learn by looking for credible sources. We look for credibility in a person's message or an argument. So when you create your final project, you need to remember that your audience is going to be looking for that, is going to be listening to your message with that questionable attitude. They're going to be looking for a source of credibility. And it could be any of those things we just learned about in this chapter. And your urban legend needs to, can be made memorable if you use a source of credibility. Credibility makes people believe. So if you remember, let me get to that in a minute. Okay, so as we move forward into Unit 4, we're going to talk about the success principle of emotion. An emotional message makes people care. So while credibility makes us believe, an emotional message makes people care. And if you remember, what makes a sticky message is that a message is sticky if your audience understands what you're telling them, if they can remember the message when they leave, and if it compels them to act on it. So we can use concrete details, we can use credibility, and we can use emotion to get them to care. We'll see concrete details work well, like statistics, but they don't get you to care about the message, and don't get the audience to care about the message. That emotion will do that. So you'll see how using emotion can be very effective as long as we don't go too far. So we can use emotion to get you to care, but as long as we don't take it that extra step, make it too far with things like emotional pleas that start to sound like a sob story or a threat. A threat would be, if you don't act today, it'll be gone tomorrow. You've heard that before. So as you develop your final project, begin to be thinking about how you can use these principles to make your message sticky, make it memorable, actionable, and credible. I'm sorry, memorable, actionable, and something they understand, something that's memorable, and something they will act on. Okay, also in this week in Unit 4, there's an inspiring video by Steve Jobs that shows his techniques for presentation, something he was very, very successful at for all his years. He provides an excellent overview of what a simple and memorable presentation is. He uses a little structure that he uses the same all the time, gives him 3 ideas, no more, and he discusses how he develops those messages. So be sure to watch that because it'll help you a great deal in developing your final project message. Your papers were really good this week. I graded them all, but I encourage you to make sure you check the feedback that I provided so that when you develop your audience analysis this week, you're on the right track. So good work, everyone, this week. Again, stay healthy, stay in if possible, and thank you to all who are on the front lines. I sincerely appreciate all the efforts that you're doing, and I'll keep you and your families in my thoughts this week, and I'll see you in the forums. Thanks for your time, and please leave comments in the discussion forum after you've watched the video. Let me know if these are helpful to you. Thanks very much.